37 women are dead, 9 more still missing, and police have spent $10 million hunting the most deadly serial killer in American history.
In the shadows of Seattle, one man's twisted desires turned a riverbank into a graveyard. In the snowy backdrop of Salt Lake City, on a cold day in February 1949, a boy named Gary was born. He was the middle child in the Ridgway family, but behind the doors of their home, there was trouble. His parents fought a lot, and young Gary saw it all. Growing up, he had problems of his own. He wet the bed until he was a teenager, and every time his mother would clean him up. That created a strange mix of feelings inside him: anger, confusion, and even some dark thoughts about his own mother. As a young teen, those feelings turned violent once. At the age of 13, he attacked a boy with a knife. But then, life took a turn. He finished high school in 1969 and wore the U.S. Navy uniform for a couple of years. After that, he settled in Seattle, finding steady work painting trucks. Gary looked like an everyday guy. He got married not once, but 3 times. He became a dad and had a son, but he had a problem. He hated women, and nobody could suspect his actions. Gary Ridgway, the Green River Killer, went on to become America's most chilling serial killer. He strangled them, leaving their bodies scattered all over King County. It was like a twisted game. By scattering them, he thought he could outsmart the cops. The scariest part? Nobody suspected him. He never whispered a word about his dark deeds. No creepy mementos or trophies were kept. Day in and day out, he painted trucks at the local Kenworth truck factory in Renton. How did it all come to light? Well, in July 1982, a chilling discovery was made. Kids found Wendy Caulfield, just 16 years old, lifeless in Seattle's Green River. She had been strangled. Soon after, 4 more bodies were found in the same river. All women, all strangled. By mid-August, the number rose. Detective David Reichert was one of the first to see the grim scene on August 15th. Marcy Chapman, 31, and 17-year-old Cynthia Hines lay in the water. Close by, 16-year-old Opal Mills lay hidden, her blue pants tied tight around her neck. Her body told a violent story, with marks and bruises on her arms and legs. By August 16th, things got serious. The police knew they had a serial killer on their hands. They started a team called the Green River Task Force. But even with this team, the killings didn't stop. Bodies kept appearing near the river and close to the airport. For 2 long, dark years, the unknown killer kept on. He hurt and took the lives of over 40 women. Detective Reichert once said to a magazine, "Finding a body felt like getting hit with a baseball bat." The city lived in fear, wondering who would be next. In the spring of 1983, things took a strange turn. An 18-year-old woman named Marie Malvar, who worked the streets, vanished. Her boyfriend last saw her stepping into a truck with peeling paint, driven by a man with dark hair. The man looked to be in his 30s or 40s. A few days later, the cops knocked on Ridgway's door. They had questions about Marie. Ridgway played dumb. He said he didn't know her. Later that year, they talked to him again about the many murders. But Ridgway kept his cool and denied knowing anything. The cops had nothing solid on him. Years later, Ridgway shared a dark secret about that first chat with the cops in 1983. Marie had scratched his arm when she tried to get away from him. During the police questioning, he stood next to a fence, hiding those scratches. After the cops left, Ridgway did something even more twisted. He burned his own arm with battery acid. He wanted those scratches gone for good. By May 1984, Ridgway was still on the radar, but he was sneaky. Many knew he hung around with women from the streets, so he was a person the cops watched. One day, Ridgway himself walked into the police station, saying he wanted to help. They gave him a lie detector test, asking if he had killed any women. Ridgway passed. He fooled everyone. In 1986, the cops were stuck. The Green River Killer was still out there. They had no strong clues. Then, from a dark cell in Florida, another famous killer reached out. Ted Bundy, a name that sent shivers down the spine, wrote a letter. He had heard about the case and thought he could help. Bundy had taken many lives too, so maybe he knew something. Detective Reichert got on a plane to Florida. Bundy was on death row, waiting for his end. In that cold cell, Bundy whispered a grim guess. He thought the Green River Killer might be going back to the places he left the bodies. Maybe he was doing terrible things and assaulting them, even after they were gone. Later, Ridgway said it was true. Bundy's dark mind had guessed right. In 1987, the cops were on Ridgway's trail. He was the last one seen with 2 of the women who never came back. So, the police had a look around his home and trucks. While they were there, Ridgway spat into a little cup. The spit would later become the key to unlocking his dark secrets. But back then, the technology wasn't good enough. They couldn't clearly see the signs in his DNA. So, for over 10 long years, Ridgway walked free. Fast forward to 2001. Science had gotten better. Beverly Himmick, a scientist, said to a newspaper that they had one last shot. They didn't have much, but they decided to look again. They cleaned the victim's nails, scratching for any DNA they could get their hands on. They even looked at the ropes and cords that had been used. Luckily, on one of the victims, they found his sperm still in her private areas. The big moment came when they put the clues from 3 women next to Ridgway's spit from 1987. It was like fitting the last piece in a dark puzzle. All 3 matched Ridgway's spit. He had been caught by the very clue he had given them. On November 30th, 2001, the city held its breath. After almost 20 years since the first woman was found, the police finally had big news. Sheriff Reichert told everyone they had caught the Green River Killer. It was Ridgway, now an older man at 52. They had linked him to 4 of the first women who were taken: Marcia, Opal, Cynthia, and Carol Ann. Carol Ann's body was found long ago in 1983. Jump to November 5th, 2003. Ridgway stood in court. There was a deal on the table. If he told the truth, if he showed where he hid the bodies, they wouldn't give him the death penalty. He said yes to the deal, although he initially agreed to 48 murders. As part of the deal he made with the law, one more conviction got added to Ridgway's tally. That pushed his count to 49. It made him number 2 on the list of America's most notorious serial killers, based on the murders that were proven, but many think it might be closer to 80. According to him, he had killed so many, he had lost track. He told them he took most of them in his own home or in his truck. He didn't even remember most of their faces. Usually, the first time he saw them was the last time they saw anyone, he admitted, adding that he often didn't even know their names. Ridgway had a twisted logic. When asked why he targeted women who were prostitutes, according to him, they were easy to grab. No one would see. No one would miss them right away, maybe never. He chose them because he thought he could keep killing and no one would catch him. Then, on December 18th, 2003, it was Judgment Day. For all the terrible things Ridgway had done, he was sentenced to 48 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. He's currently serving his sentence at the Washington State Penitentiary in Walla Walla, Washington. And while the most notorious criminals serve their sentences, you can sentence yourself to endless knowledge with our free subscription. Subscribe now and be the mastermind of your learning.